Civil rights activists today filed suit against the city of Chicago, this over its refusal to grant parade permits to protest within sight and sound of this summer's Democratic National Convention.
ACLU Illinois attorney Rebecca Glenberg says the group bodies Outside Unjust Laws applied for permits to march during the Democratic National Convention and even made changes to their plans to address security concerns, but all applications were rejected.
Rather than make room for speech, Chicago has denied our clients and others permits to march where delegates can see them. These permit denials are unconstitutional.
Group member Christy Kirkunian says they are demanding that Democrats who say they support members of the LGBTQ community hear them.
We are not marching for a complacent majority. We are fighting like hell for people who don't have a voice, who are left out of conversations, who routinely get left behind.
The ACLU has filed a federal lawsuit saying protesters' First Amendment rights are being violated, and they are asking for quick action on the case. In the Loop, Craig Dellamore, News Radio 1059 WBBM.
Coming up on All Things Considered on WBEZ, the ACLU is filing a lawsuit against the city of Chicago for denying activist groups the ability to march down Michigan Avenue during the Democratic National Convention. 71 degrees at 4:04. Good afternoon. I'm Melba Lara with WBEZ News. A coalition of organizations is suing the city of Chicago for denying a permit to march downtown during this summer's Democratic National Convention. WBEZ's Michael Puente reports.
The coalition is made up of groups that fight for reproductive and LGBTQ plus rights. They want to march on Michigan Avenue in August when the DNC comes to town. The city denied a permit because of the impact on traffic and limited police resources. Ed Yanka is spokesman for the American Civil Liberties Union of Illinois, which filed the lawsuit in federal court this morning on behalf of the groups.
Simply denying people summarily the ability to march and hold a march for vague reasons is just not appropriate under the First Amendment.
The lawsuit also names the heads of the city transportation and police departments. The city did not respond to requests for comment. Michael Puente, WBEZ News.
Once again, we're seeing more organizations suing for the right to march outside of the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago. Today, the ACLU joined a coalition of LGBTQ plus groups to file a federal lawsuit. They want to send a message to party delegates about protecting their rights on a national level. Their suit claims the city violated their First and 14th Amendment rights by denying their request for a permit to march at the convention.
In the third largest city in the United States, we have to fight for our right to get close enough to our politicians for them to actually hear us. I ask you again, what year is this?
The coalition of groups wants to march and call on Democratic lawmakers to take federal action to protect bodily autonomy in the United States. We've reached out to the city about the lawsuit, but have not heard back from them yet.
The pressure is ratcheting up on the city of Chicago to ease restrictions on demonstrations connected to the Democratic National Convention. As political reporter Craig Wall tells us today, a coalition of groups planning a march for abortion rights today sue the city because their permit was denied.
Abortion rights groups want to be able to march down Michigan Avenue on the eve of the Democratic National Convention in August to make their case to arriving delegates who will be staying in hotels there.
Clearly, the most important thing is that there is some way for protesters to reach those Democratic delegates that they have really important messages for.
So today, the ACLU filed a lawsuit challenging the city's denial of the group's permit request. They are also asking a judge to declare unconstitutional the city's ordinance on parade permits and the new security zone ordinance, which will allow law enforcement to regulate demonstrations near the United Center, which will host the DNC.
It's 2024, and we have zero tolerance for milquetoast Democrat support. They're not listening. We have to make them.
The coalition says there is precedence for their request, pointing to the 2012 NATO summit where demonstrators were allowed to march on Michigan Avenue. It's just the latest lawsuit against the city over DNC demonstration restrictions. While the Secret Service has the final say about what the security perimeter will look like, the agency is leaving it up to the city to determine where the protests can be held outside of that still-to-be-determined zone.
To preserve democracy, they shut down the First Amendment. To preserve democracy, they told every group that it can't protest within sight and sound of their intended First Amendment audiences.
The groups noted that during the 1996 DNC, protesters were allowed to be much closer to the United Center than they will be this summer.
Permit or no permit, we will be marching on the eve of the Democratic Convention.
Craig Wall, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
A group of 9 organizations teamed up with the American Civil Liberties Union to file a lawsuit against the city of Chicago. They're all taking legal action because the city has denied the group's request to hold a march during the Democratic National Convention this August.
The city says it doesn't want chaos during the Democratic National Convention. But their actions, like the actions of Richard J. Daley a generation ago, they're about preserving disorder.
They plan to march to protect abortion rights, LGBTQ rights, and bodily autonomy. The protesters were told they can hold demonstrations on Columbus Drive between Roosevelt and Jackson. The convention's happening at the United Center, about 3 miles away.
A collection of groups have filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Chicago over the denial to protest near Democratic National Convention sites.
Our Christine Flores is live in the loop with details on their complaint. Christine.
Well, Gaynor and Patrick, good afternoon. Now, this is the next step a number of groups are taking along with the ACLU after having their permit to protest during the DNC denied. They say they are looking to rally near the convention center and here along Michigan Avenue. Now, the ACLU is representing a number of groups who have now filed a federal lawsuit asking a federal judge to grant them the ability to protest closer to DNC areas. The groups want to demonstrate near the United Center, McCormick Place, and Michigan Avenue, but they say the city has told them they are restricted to Columbus Drive from Roosevelt to Jackson, which is more than 3.5 miles away. The coalition is made up of abortion rights activists and LGBTQ plus groups. They say they submitted their first application at the beginning of January, and like other groups looking to protest during the DNC, have gotten denied.
By filing this lawsuit today with the American Civil Liberties Union, we're giving the system another chance to do the right thing. But I gotta say, it's absurd that we even have to file a federal lawsuit in order to assemble here while the Democratic Convention's happening.
The reasoning has been very vague. So the city has cited, not having enough resources during the convention to ameliorate any traffic disruptions, and they've talked about not having sufficient law enforcement. This is one of the reasons that it's clear that the permit denial is so clearly unconstitutional.
As of half an hour ago, a representative with the city says they have not been served this complaint, adding that they do not comment on pending litigation. For now, live along Michigan Avenue, Christine Flores, WGN News.
DNC demonstration push. The ACLU filing a lawsuit on behalf of 9 local groups who are looking to protest closer to the delegates this summer. More details on that after the break. ACLU has filed a lawsuit on behalf of groups wanting to protest near the site of the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago.
As WGN's Christine Flores reports, they want to make sure delegates can hear their complaints.
Well, good evening. This is the next step a number of groups, along with the ACLU, are taking after having their permit denied to protest during the DNC. They are asking to rally near areas such as the Convention Center and here along Michigan Avenue.
It's absurd that we even have to file a federal lawsuit in order to assemble here while the Democratic Convention's happening.
The ACLU is representing 9 groups who are calling themselves Bodies Outside of Unjust Laws, and who have filed a federal lawsuit asking a judge to grant them the ability to protest closer to DNC areas such as the United Center, McCormick Place, and Michigan Avenue, where most delegates usually stay.
the reasoning has been very vague. So the city has cited, not having enough resources during the convention to ameliorate any traffic disruptions, and they've talked about not having sufficient law enforcement. This is one of the reasons that it's clear that the permit denial is so clearly unconstitutional.
The group says the city told them they are restricted to Columbus Drive from Roosevelt to Jackson, more than 3 miles from the United Center. The coalition notes similar backlash protesters received back in 1996, the last time the DNC was in Chicago. Back then, litigation moved the security footprint within sight and sound of delegates.
We've been down this road again, and one would hope that we would learn the lessons from 96 and not have to have this kind of litigation.
The complaint argues the Chicago permit ordinance and the recently passed city ordinance for security zones are unconstitutional.
The most important thing is that there is some way for protesters to reach those Democratic delegates.
Organizers are pushing to be closer to Democratic delegates who they say have done little to help their causes.
To force the Democrats to live up to their verbal promises, rather than cynically using our issues for electoral fodder. And like with so many previous promises, ignoring them after the election.
The DNC is scheduled to take place here in the city between August 19th through the 22nd. And we reached out to the city on this matter, and they say they do not comment on pending litigation. Reporting along Michigan Avenue, Christine Flores, WGN News.
Well, the American Civil Liberties Union is protesting a city decision. Chicago has denied a request from that group to host a march during the 2024 DNC in August. The group says it will work vigorously to make sure its rights are protected and that it is allowed to march.
There are marches and rallies, there are demonstrations that take place every single day in this city that are not unsafe, that are not dangerous. And the idea that suddenly, because it's the convention and we have this national spotlight, that we have to act like everybody who wants to say something is a danger, I think really does a disservice both to the city, but frankly to our fundamental principles of the First Amendment.
The ACLU plans to march on August 18th. That is the day before the convention opens.
Fighting for the right to protest. A number of organizations taking that fight to court. Organizations are now suing Chicago, including the ACLU, which accuses the city of violating the First Amendment by denying groups' requests to host a march during the Democratic National Convention in August. The suit asks a federal court in Chicago to allow the group bodies outside to march at a time and in a place that allows marchers to reach their intended audience, the delegates to the convention.
In the third largest city in the United States, we have to fight for our right to get close enough to our politicians for them to actually hear us. I ask you again, what year is this? The answer is, it's 2024, and we have zero tolerance for milquetoast Democrat support. They're not listening. We have to make them.
City counters with this. They've offered the group a place to protest, which they say is away from hotels where convention delegates are staying. The group says they were only given 5 days to accept before the offer would be rescinded.
My body, my choice! Their body, their choice! My body, my choice! Their body, their choice!